Phillies have made a couple of trades today. They added catcher Wilson Ramos. Now, he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. He's on the DL with a hamstring problem. And then Aaron Loup, 42 strikeouts, 35 innings, 64 strikeouts in 57 innings last season. So a lefty strikeout guy. Not great numbers this year, but it gives the Phillies a lefty in the pen. Let's bring in Frank Klose. He's got the mailbag and some Phillies news here on the Sports Bash. He appears like all guests via the Boardwalk on the hotline. What's up, Frank?
Hey, Mike. Welcome back.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for filling in there yesterday. I know you guys had a good time, but today things are getting real. The Phillies making a couple of moves. Let's first start with Wilson Ramos. Apparently they didn't give up a whole heck of a lot to get him. Now, he's on the DL. He's not going to be able to play for a couple of weeks, it looks like. But give us your take on that move.
I find it fascinating. I'm trying to figure out still what the value is for the Tampa Bay Rays in this deal. It sounds like they're moving Chris Archer to the Pittsburgh Pirates also. So this could be a situation where they knew they needed roster space. Maybe they wanted to clear some money, not all of it. I think when they grabbed Ramos, he was hurt actually when they signed him, I believe, and part of the value for them was that they were going to flip him. But they got an all-star season out of him so far this year. It's a shame he's got a little hamstring issue, but he did clear his medicals. The Phillies have formally announced the trade, which means that he cleared his medical evaluation, so that's looking pretty good. I'm trying to find an official timetable for his return, but it sounds like it could be just a couple of weeks more, and then he certainly is an upgrade for the Phillies in terms of offense and defense, provided he's his old self when he gets back off this disabled stint. And for the Phillies, I think this is good because Jorge Alfaro has had his hiccups this season a little bit. Andrew Knapp has had his. Here you have a nice veteran catcher that can hit, that's going to come right into your lineup. And, I looked at his OPS compared to the lineup last night, and he would be the second highest OPS in that Phillies lineup. So extra bat, extra defense, and somebody who can mentor the two young catchers who still may be the two catchers of the future.
How do you think he fits in with this current team in terms of playing time? How do you think that's going to shake out? How would you see this going down?
Well, I think he's going to be the starter. I think that's pretty clear. And then, it might only be a couple weeks that they need to send someone to the minors. Now, they can't send Jorge Alfaro to the minors. He has used up all his minor league options at this point because, he was added to the 40-man roster rather young for the Rangers. And so the last spring training he was with the Rangers, he ended up being optioned to the minors, and then the first two with the Phillies optioned to the minors. So he needs to stick around. He can't go to the minors, and frankly, there's no reason to send him to the minors because he's been decent, although not as good as Ramos has been. But probably Andrew Knapp with a minor league option goes down to AAA for a couple weeks, comes right back on September 1st, and you're probably going to see Andrew Knapp as a pinch hitter from both sides of the plate, while Ramos mentors Alfaro, and Alfaro kind of takes on that backup catcher role. So, I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that, if Andrew Knapp can be like a Brandon Inge type, if you remember that name, he made a pretty nice career for himself as sort of a super sub with the Tigers after being their catcher. Knapp can hit a little bit. If he's kind of focusing on being a pinch hitter from both sides of the plate, if he can add maybe some outfield to his repertoire as well. I know he's played some first base. He could be a nice bench piece for a team at some point, but you don't have many switch hitting catchers around, so his long-term future will be determined later. But I can definitely see him being the third catcher / pinch hitter as the Phillies go into September.
Hey Frank, it's Ryan. We missed you over here, man. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. So you touched on Ramos. Now talk on Aaron Loup a little bit, and what do you think he's really going to bring to the team here with this addition? I mean, he has 42 strikeouts in 35 innings this season, I saw. Talk about, the role that he's going to play in the clubhouse moving forward the rest of the way.
Yeah, this one was a bit of a surprise. I don't think he was really on anybody's radar. When you look, I looked on every roster, to be honest with you, to see who might the Phillies target at this trade deadline, and I did not conclude that he would be one of those players. However, I think if you look at what he brings to this particular team, he's a high strikeout lefty. And, it sounds kind of bad, but the Phillies have had their defensive struggles. And if you strike somebody out, the ball doesn't get put into play. So I think they are trying to get somebody who can maximize those strikeout opportunities from the left side. Certainly, Austin Davis has been tremendous since he's come up for the Phillies. We still have seen some struggles out of Adam Morgan. It's still kind of new. I don't know what they're going to do with Adam Morgan on this roster yet. Clearly, they need to make room for Loup on the roster, and it's very interesting to see. Now, it looks like the Phillies lost out on Jake Diekman, who's going to be headed to the D-backs, perhaps. It looks like that seems like that was something that was in the works around the time the Phillies got Loup. So, but be pretty interesting to see. Okay, so now that this is all breaking right now, it looks like Trevor Plouffe has been designated for assignment for right now. So that's how they made room on the 40-man roster, and then this is all coming down right this second. So the Blue Jays are getting AAA right-hander Jacob Waguespack. So it's really not that much the Phillies gave up, and it looks like he's headed to join the major league roster. Right now, they have to do some more shuffling because now they're short a bench player, but maybe they'll figure that all later after the Phillies get back from Boston, and because they need time to report. So I'm sure they'll have who they have on the roster for tonight in Boston, and then when they head back home, they'll figure out the rest.
Yeah, so a lot of moving and shaking, and the Phillies are getting J.P. Crawford back soon, and then you would think this should strengthen their bench a little bit because you get Crawford back. You get Crawford, Cabrera, Kingery, Hernandez, and Franco. Two of those guys have to be on the bench every night.
Yeah, this could be a sign, too, that, J.P. Crawford has been rehabbing. Maybe he's close to joining them, so they figure that Plouffe can, he's expendable here because Crawford's going to resume that position sooner than later. So J.P. Crawford was It's actually kind of funny. A quick side note: Crawford in his rehab game in the Gulf Coast League, he went 0 for 1 with 3 RBI. I have never seen anything like that before. But he kept walking with the bases loaded. So really not much competitive action for him in his first appearance. But he is rehabbing. I bet you he comes north soon to join AA or AAA, and he could be back with the Phillies any minute.
Yeah, real quick too. You got 20 minutes or so till the trade deadline. Is there, in your opinion, a move that could be made that would make us change our expectations for this team?
I think these complementary pieces are really what they needed, as they were heading forward, just because there really weren't any impact pieces available. They were in on Machado. They did their best on Machado, came up short. But beyond that, you're just looking for these complementary pieces that will help the roster. There's if you look at what the Phillies have been looking for, Adam Jones, for example, was somebody that they were said to be interested in. And if Jones had accepted the trade, as some reports say, he could be a Philly. So it's clear they're not looking for anything earth-shattering, perhaps, but just complementary pieces that'll kind of help the young guys play a little bit better, spell them a little bit, provide some leadership. And I think they're hoping that's good enough to win this division. The Braves have been very active, too, by the way. Looks like the Braves just picked up Kevin Gausman from the Orioles.
So, Frank, you touched on the moves that have been made with, like Mike said, about 20 minutes to go here. Are you expecting any type of other move to be made by Klentak at all as we wind down, or is this it? And if this is it, are you satisfied with the moves that have been made?
Well, as you said, there are 20 minutes. The only thing that could possibly still happen at this point is if they're trying to get a right-handed bench bat a la Adam Jones. The Phillies were linked possibly to Jose Bautista, who's currently with the Mets, who would kind of fill that veteran pinch hitter / backup for Nick Williams / right-handed at bats in right field type role. And if they did something minor like that, they only have 20 minutes to do it, but they seem like they've been pretty busy with working out these two trades. And the Phillies could add a bat like that later. They still have August to do that.
Yeah, you got the post deadline waiver deadline in August still to come. Let's dive into a couple of mailbag questions here. Tim wanted to know, what should the Phillies be doing before the trade deadline today? Now, they did make a couple of moves. What else, Frank, would you like to see?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Of course, I wrote that. I put off writing this mailbag as long as I possibly could in case something happened. But unfortunately, I had to finally write it so that I'd be done in time for the show. But the moves that I did not anticipate would be the catcher. I mean, I think that was definitely a nice pickup. But I thought that they should do a left-handed reliever, which they did, and then a right-handed bat, which they have not yet, but they still could. So I think in terms of what they've done, there's not much more they could have done. You don't want to see them give up anything of immense value. One thing interesting about the Ramos trade is it sounds like they are not giving up any of their top 30 prospects to do it. The trade with the Blue Jays did not give up a top prospect to do it. It just seems like they're using some of this surplus of talent that they have right now on the outer edges to try to kind of solve the outer edges of the major league roster, and it looks like they're doing a pretty good job with that.
All right, another question from Andrew wants to know, who might the Phillies be able to get after the deadline in August?
Yeah, now this one is a tough one to answer. Now, I put one name in my description of this, which was Andrew McCutchen of the Giants, just because he's kind of seen as a veteran that might clear waivers next month. Now, you can make trades in August, but for that to happen, teams have to put their players on waivers and basically give all 29 other teams the opportunity to claim that player. If a team claims that player, then the club can give that team who claimed the player the contract of that player, or they can pull them back. So trades can be made. In fact, last year, probably the biggest trade of the year that made the biggest difference en route to the Astros winning the World Series was when they got Justin Verlander from the Detroit Tigers. That was an August deal. McCutchen's a name that people have speculated could be an August trade, and that's why I kind of used him as an example in that piece. But a lot of these names we won't know until you get there. I mean, there might be a team that's in contention right now that kind of falls out, and they say, all right, well, let me see if I can dump some of this money off that I have on my payroll, since it doesn't look like we're going to win. And when that happens, a team like the Phillies that has some money to spend, they can jump in and either claim that player, or they can see who clears waivers and see who they might want to take a chance to get. I mean, you look back to the 2008 Phillies, two small moves they made in August that made such a difference were adding Matt Stairs and adding Scott Air, and both those players cleared waivers. So there still could be some opportunities. A lot of it depends on who clears, what teams are out of contention a month from now that are in contention now, and you never know. I mean, maybe the Phillies have an injury or something of the sort. So lots could happen in 30 days. It's actually a long time. So lots could change. It's really hard to predict what now, but chances are there will be some opportunities there for a team like the Phillies with money who can go and grab somebody.
All right, last question is from Pat. He wants to know, after Chase Utley, who made his last visit to Philly a week ago, who are the last remaining guys in baseball that played at the Vet?
All right, now I had to do a lot of research on this one, and by the way, I really appreciated a non-trade deadline question because I'd like to answer something that wasn't going to change since I wrote it. But looking far and wide, now there were two players on the 2003 Phillies that actually are still in the major leagues. One of them is Chase Utley, as mentioned. And the other is actually reliever Ryan Madsen. He actually made his debut with the Phillies wearing number 57 back in 2003. But I looked far and wide, and I looked through the Phillies schedule in 02 and 03, and Adrian Beltre, the veteran who very well could retire at the end of this year, played at the Vet. Albert Pujols played at the Vet. Miguel Cabrera made his major league debut in 2003 and played at the Vet. And Bartolo Colon, who's 57 years old or something like that, he played at the Vet. And Ichiro Suzuki, if you want to consider him active, since reports are he might show up for that opening series in Japan next year with the Seattle Mariners, he played at the Vet. But really, yeah, that's it. It's hard to believe it. It's such a distant memory. And if you look at the stadiums in the National League East, the Phillies have the oldest stadium.
Wow, yeah, think about that. Sports Bats Live. I had a thing on my timeline today on Facebook that 8 years ago, I guess today, I was at Nats Park. So that ballpark is, and the Nationals, to think about, they've been around for that long. I saw Vlad Guerrero is wearing an Angels hat on his Hall of Fame bust, and I said, come on, Vlad Guerrero's an Expo.
Yeah, I agree with that one there. I was really surprised that he became an Angel for that Hall of Fame plaque. And it used to be they wanted to have some Expos represented, so they put him there. I think the fans in Montreal are probably disappointed today about that.
Sure. Frank Klose, at Frank Klose with the K. And Matt Klintek, by the way, will be talking in about a half an hour that he will discuss the trade deadline. So we'll see if the Phillies do something in the next 15 minutes. And if not, we'll hear what Matt Klintek has to say. And we'll have you up to date here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Mike.